Hey everyone, in today's video I'm going to show you how to make this cute 2D dinosaur for a girl's birthday cake. So I've got some Saraceno that I've just coloured in a really light pink. I've actually used the Sugar Flare Fuchsia but just not added a lot to it. So we're going to start off with a teardrop shape, and I'm just working on separating the body from the tail and the neck. So the tail's just going to be kind of like a really small flick, and then the neck is just going to be slightly longer and slightly thicker, and we want to try to have it all the same thickness from the base up to the top. And then I'm just going to go ahead and try to flatten this slightly against my mat. And just smoothing over the edges. I quite like using this method because it allows me to shape the dinosaur into the shape that I want it to, just by smoothing over the edges rather than going and trying to cut it out and then smoothing over the edges. So I'm just twisting the neck a little bit more just to get it a little bit more even, and I'm going to have the tail so it flicks up ever so slightly. And the neck will go the other way. I haven't needed to add any Tylo powder or anything like that into this. The Saraceno, once it starts to cool down, will set quite firmly, and you shouldn't need any internal supports at all. I've chopped the neck just where I kind of guessed that I want the neck to finish, and then I'm just going to cut some little legs off. So I'm cutting at an angle where I want it to join on to the body, and for the back leg I'm keeping it quite flat, and I'm just pinching out the bottom of the leg just to create kind of like a toe area, and just going in with my Dresden tool and pushing that in a little bit more just to give it a bit more definition. Now this one is slightly thinner than the one that I will do for the front, because obviously it's just in the background, so it doesn't need to be too thick. Then for the front one we're going to do the same kind of thing, but this time it's going to be a little bit thicker. And again I'm going to cut off at an angle just where I kind of want it to go. You can see there I'm just taking it off, and then we're going to create a little bit of a foot in this one as well, and I'm making these quite thin. Now it's up to you, you could add support into this part if you wanted to. I chose not to. I chose to add foliage behind the dinosaur, which kind of helped prop it up. So I didn't feel the need to add additional support through the legs or through the back of the dinosaur. I'm just going to trim the back leg down a little bit more. So the idea is that we kind of want the back leg just to sit slightly up from the front leg. You can see I've done the same with the back legs. And now I've just rolled a piece of fondant and I've flattened it at one side just ever so slightly, and then I'm just going to go over with my Dresden tool, and this is just going to create sort of like the chunky part of the leg that attaches to the body. I'm not quite sure what that would be in a dinosaur, possibly a thigh maybe. So what I'm doing now is I've got some fondant just underneath it, just propping that top leg up, and I'm just blending in around the bottom of the join onto the foot, and then around the side that's closest to the tail. The other part I want to leave, I just want to flatten it down a little bit, but I want to leave it because obviously that would be the part of the skin that would have some movement in it. I guess it's kind of a bit like a hip, but for a dinosaur, if that's a thing. And I'm just using, I will put a link to this tool because it's absolutely fab. It's just sort of like a flat silicone brush type thing, but it's really good for blending in and smoothing over without leaving any marks or indentations or anything like that. So it's from Serrat, and I will put a link in the description box for that one below. We're going to do the same for the front leg, but this time just a small sausage type, just to bring the difference between the height of the body and the height of the leg up a little bit. And then once that's on, we're going to add a bit of a chunkier piece, and again just do the same as what we did for the back leg but with the front leg. This time we are blending sort of like up the top and out to the side as well. And again, I'm just going to go in with that silicone, can't really call it a brush because it's not got any bristles, but that silicone brush that I'll just use to blend it in to get rid of any lines. So once we've done the legs and you're happy with them, we're going to pop this to one side just to firm up a little bit and dry a little bit more, and we're going to make the head. So for the head, I'm going with the same colour that I have used for the body, and we're going to roll kind of like an egg shape. So we're going to flatten that on the table, and then this is where we kind of want to guide it into the shape of the head that we're going to have. So I'm kind of making the back of the head a little bit chunkier than I'm making the front of the head. This is because the back of the head is going to join onto the neck, and we kind of want, even though it's 2D, we kind of want a little bit of a shape to the head that we're going to do. So I'm just checking it for size, and I'm going to oblong it a little bit to make the face just a little bit rounder and the back of the neck a little bit flatter. I'm going to cut the neck off at an angle, and that piece that we've chopped off, we are going to use that to support the back of the head. So basically we're going to flip that over and just attach it back on, but going the other way, so it kind of creates like a level platform. You will need a smaller piece just under the front of the head just to raise that up whilst it dries. And then we're going to start working on the details of the face. So we're going to blend in that area of the neck, just like we have done with the legs. We don't need it to blend all the way to the front, but just to give it some support and just to give it so it's actually stuck down properly, I've blended it all the way across. And then I'm just going to re-go in and define that line between the neck and the head. So we're kind of doing it like the dinosaur's looking back a little bit, so there's that crease in the neck. Again, using that tool just to smooth over everything. If you do have any questions, feel free to leave comments down below, contact me on Facebook. I'm always quite active in responding to people. So you can see there that I'm just creating that crease in the neck. And what we want to do is we want to smooth over. So when you create the crease with this kind of tool, you'll end up with an indentation just in the middle. But what we want to do is we want to smooth that down on the neck as well. Just gently going in for a little bit of a smile. So you can see there that I'm making it separate a little bit. I've got the tiniest ball tool ever, and I'm just going to create 2 nostrils. And then I'm just smoothing over that join, so you can see I'm just going back in and just smoothing over. But whilst I'm smoothing, I'm still keeping that crease that's there as well. And then I'm just going to take out the support that we've got underneath the head, just to see what it looks like without it, because we've got to bear in mind that this is how it's going to dry. And so I've just chose to lift it up just a little bit more, but more at the top of the head than the bottom. And then what we're going to do is we're going to put in the eye socket. So once you're happy with the shape of the neck, we're going to use the ball tool just to create a big circle for the eye. We're going to fill that with white. Then we're going to go through with the ball tool again. And the ball tool is going to create the socket for the eye. Now I've left the eye black, but you can go in with a different colour if you wanted to. I'm going to use my ball tool just to spread out that circle a little bit more, and just flatten it with my finger. And you can see here I've rolled a sausage that's pointier at one side than the other, and I'm going to use this just to create sort of like an eye line, and we're going to cut this off at an angle, and then we're just going to curl that around the eye socket again. So just using the brush to push that in place. And then we're going to go in and just put a little white dot on for the light reflector, and just flattening that down with the Dresden tool. And then same process that we did for the eyelashes, but this time we're going to chop off the pointy bit on the side, and we're going to do 3 of those. And then I'm just using my brush just to place them on, gradually getting smaller as we go up. So the first one will be the biggest one, and then you'll have a slightly smaller one, and then an even smaller one. And I'm putting these on with my brush because it's easier to pick up with those, but also I'm just using the brush and my Dresden tool just to shape it so it curls up a little bit. So you can see I'm just trimming it down, picking it up with my brush. My brush has hardly got any water on, but it is still sticky. And then what we're going to do is we're going to cut some triangles, and these are just going to be used to create the spines on the back of the dinosaur. Now, I'm not going too neat with these. I kind of want them to be a bit higgledy-piggledy. And then what we're going to do is we're going to cut off the edges all the way around, and just soften it a little bit so it's not quite sharp, but they're a little bit rounded. We're just going to add a little bit of water along the back and down on the tail, and we're going to fill the back with these different shapes. As they get towards the back of the tail, they should aim to get a little bit smaller, and the bigger ones should aim to be sort of in the middle of the spine. So I'm just going to do this all throughout the back, just leaving a little bit of a gap between them all. And the water will just help this stick once it's dry. So you can see I've filled all that area in there and just pushed it down. Next we're going to create a little bow. So I've rolled out a tiny bit of purple. We're going to cut a rectangle shape out of there. We're going to fold it in the middle, pinching it, and then we're going to fold over either side of the bow. And then we're going to pinch it in the middle again. We're going to roll out another piece of purple, and I'm going to cut 2 small rectangles and place one on top of the other. One rectangle will be smaller than the other. And this is just going to create sort of like a crease in the bit of the bow that wraps around the larger part of the bow. I'm going to trim off the excess, and I'm going to wrap that round. Now I am going to go in and just create some indentations, just to give the bow a little bit more movement. So I'm just using a pin for this. So you can see I'm just pushing it in there, and again at the other side. And we're going to wrap the middle of the bow all the way around. We're just going to attach this to the head with a little bit of water. So now I've got dusky pink and rose in Sugar Flare and a little bit of dipping solution, and I'm just going to go in and paint over some of the details of the dinosaur, so the mouth and the nose. And then I'm going to go in and create some different shadows and textures all along in the creases of the dinosaur. And it's just a tiny little bit that I've got on my brush here. And I do go over it with a little bit of a bigger brush as well, just to fan out that colour, so it's not just a harsh line, but it's quite soft and blended. And then I'm going to go in with the darker colour, which is the rose, and the rose is going to create a bit more of a shadow along the bottom of the body, and also sort of like behind the legs. So again, it's just a little bit of powder and maybe sort of 1 or 2 drops of the dipping solution. You don't need a lot. And then you can see it just gives it a little bit more depth in the shadows, a little bit darker. And what we're going to do is we're going to paint up the belly with this as well. So painting some splodges on the top of the dinosaur, some bigger shapes, some smaller ones getting down towards the tail, and some on the head as well. and then mixing both the colours together. I'm just putting the smaller brush on the bottom and then using the larger brush with a little bit of water just to fan it out along the bottom. And you can see it's just bringing the dinosaur, like another dimension to the dinosaur, making it look a little bit better, I would say. You have to work quite quickly with this because the dipping solution will dry very, very quickly. So here's the finished dinosaur. And then here it is with the foliage behind on the cake. I hope you've liked today's video. If you have, don't forget to comment down below. Feel free to give it a share. And if you'd want to see more of my videos, click the links on the screen now. Thanks for watching.